I'm 66 now, and for 40 years, I've kept the biggest secret you can imagine. In the barn behind my house, away from prying eyes, there's a creature the government has been trying to find since before I was born. I call him Samuel. He's a Bigfoot. I stumbled upon him when I was 26, back in 1984, dying in the woods near my place. That day, I made a choice that changed both our lives forever.
Let me take you back to August 1984. The summer was scorching and dry in the Cascade Mountains of Oregon, where I had lived since I was 18. I inherited the 40 acres from my uncle. It had a small house and a barn, so remote that my closest neighbor was 3 miles away. It suited me perfectly because I enjoyed my solitude and the simple life. My name is Henry Walsh. Back then, I was just a quiet carpenter, working jobs in the nearby town of Sisters, building decks, making cabinets, and fixing roofs. It was honest work, and it kept me afloat. I lived alone, never married, content with my books and the peaceful forest around me. Then, on August 14th, 1984, while I was working in my shop, I heard something that made me halt. It was a sound like nothing I had ever encountered. Deep and painful, echoing through the trees. It was not quite human, was not quite animal. It was something in between. I grabbed my rifle. In bear country, you always carry a gun in the woods, so I set off towards the sound. I followed it about a quarter mile into the forest until I found the source. Initially, I thought it was a bear caught in a trap. But as I got closer, forcing my way through the underbrush, I realized it was something completely different. Lying on its side near a fallen tree was a massive creature, at least 7.5 feet tall, draped in dark brown hair and stained with blood. Its arms were too long, shoulders too broad. And its face, wow, the face was like nothing I had ever seen. Almost human, but not quite. It had a heavy brow, a broad nose, and eyes filled with pain, and what seemed like intelligence, a Bigfoot. A real, living Bigfoot, injured and dying right on my property. My first instinct? To run. Every scary campfire tale and warning about creatures in the woods rushed back to me, but then he looked right at me. I saw something in its eyes that made me freeze. Not just a wild animal, but a mix of understanding, recognition, and fear. It was scared of me. Slowly, I lowered my rifle. "Easy," I said, even though I wasn't sure it could get what I meant. "I'm not going to hurt you." I stepped closer, moving slowly to show I meant no harm. That's when I noticed its leg, a mess, tangled in an old bear trap, one of those illegal ones still hidden in these woods from years ago. The leg was badly infected, with the trap's teeth sunk deep into the flesh. Then it made a softer sound, not threatening this time. It was asking for help. I had dealt with injured animals before, deer, coyotes, even a bear cub once. But this was different. This was something that shouldn't even exist. If it was discovered, all sorts of people, scientists, government agents, hunters, would swarm my place. But looking at that creature in pain, I couldn't just walk away. "All right," I murmured to myself, "let's see what we can do." I dashed back to my house, grabbed my toolbox, medical supplies, and the only anesthetic I had, a bottle of whiskey. When I got back, the creature was still there, watching me with cautious eyes. "This is going to hurt," I warned as I opened the whiskey, "but if we don't get that trap off, the infection will do you in." I poured whiskey over my hands and the trap, then got to work trying to pry it open. It winced and made sounds of pain, but didn't attack. It seemed to get that I was trying to help. It took me almost an hour to get that trap open and free its leg. The damage was serious. deep cuts, possible fractures and infection creeping in. I did my best to clean the wounds, poured more whiskey over them to disinfect, and it let out a roar that could scare off the whole forest. I wrapped its leg with clean bandages. "You can't stay here," I said as I sat back, wiped out. "You need shelter, food, a place to heal. Can you walk?" The creature tried to stand but crumpled right away. Its leg couldn't hold any weight. I glanced around the forest, then back at it. If I left it here, it would die. Other animals would find it, or it would fall victim to the infection. After I found the creature, I made a choice that shaped the next 4 decades of my life. "My barn isn't far," I told it. "I can help you, but you need to trust me." For the next 3 hours, I encouraged it and physically supported it along the way. It was slow going, and I practically had to carry it the last 100 yards. By the time we got to my barn, we were both spent. The barn was old but sturdy, filled with stalls that hadn't seen animals in years. It had turned into a storage space for broken furniture, tools, and lumber. I cleared out the biggest stall and gently guided the creature inside, making a cozy bed of hay for it to rest on. "Stay here," I said. "I'll bring you food and water. We need to keep you hidden. No one can find out you're here. Do you get it?" The creature looked at me with keen eyes and made a soft sound. Then, incredibly, it nodded. A clear, deliberate nod. "Good God," I whispered. "You really do get it." I spent the rest of that day and night caring for it. I brought water, which it drank eagerly. Food was tougher. It turned down bread but accepted meat from my freezer. I changed its bandages, added antiseptic, and kept an eye out for any signs of fever or infection. Worsening, I couldn't keep calling it, just the creature, as it watched me, curious. When I brought my camping lantern to see better in the dark barn, it reached out and touched the glass, amazed by the light. "You've never seen this stuff before, have you?" I said. "You've been out there, living in the wild, keeping away from people." It made a sound that seemed like agreement. As the days passed and I continued to treat the injury, something incredible started happening. We began to communicate, not with words, though I realized the creature couldn't speak like a human, but we used gestures, sounds, and expressions. It learned to nod for yes and shake its head for no. It would point at things it needed or wanted. And it started making different vocalizations that I slowly learned to understand. One sound for pain, another for hunger, and another for gratitude. By the end of the week, the infection was getting better, and its leg was starting to heal. The creature could put some weight on its leg, but it would take weeks before it could walk right again. By that time, I had made a big decision. Even after he healed, I just couldn't let him roam free. Not yet. Maybe not ever. You see, just 4 days after I found him, federal agents showed up at my neighbor's property, which was only 3 miles away. They were asking about strange animal sightings, big tracks, weird noises in the woods. Someone had tipped them off and the government was on the hunt. I'd heard the whispers before. Stories of agents searching for Bigfoot, of creatures being captured and taken to secret labs. Whether those tales were true, I didn't want to find out. So, the creature stayed in my barn. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, something wild happened. We became friends. I named him Samuel, after my late uncle who gave me this place. He seemed to like the name, reacting whenever I said it. I figured he was a male, likely in his 20s, based on what I saw while tending to his wounds. Samuel was remarkably smart. Within a month, he picked up a bunch of gestures we could use to talk. He understood he had to stay hidden, never making loud noises during the day when someone might catch him. He learned my routine and waited patiently for me to bring him food and water. But deep down, he was lonely. I could see it in his eyes and hear it in the soft sounds he made at night when he thought I couldn't hear. He missed his family, the forest, his freedom. One evening, as summer turned to fall, I told him, "I'm sorry. I know this isn't fair, but if they find you, they'll take you away, lock you up, study you, maybe even worse. At least here, you're safe." Samuel looked at me with those sad, wise eyes. Then he placed one huge hand gently on my shoulder, aware of his own strength. It was a gesture that said, "I get it. Thank you for keeping me safe." That was September 1984. Ronald Reagan was president. MTV was playing music videos nonstop, and the world had no idea that in a little barn in Oregon, a man and a Bigfoot were building an unlikely friendship that would last for years. By October, Samuel's leg had improved enough for him to walk again, even if he had a slight limp that would stick with him. He could have left. The barn door was always open, yet he chose to stay. Maybe it was because he felt safe. Maybe after being alone for so long, he found a friend in me. Or maybe he just knew I was offering him protection from a world that would never accept who he was. Whatever the reason, Samuel stayed. I kept his secret year after year. Living with Samuel turned my life upside down. The barn became his home. I spent months making it cozy for him. I insulated the walls for winter, put in a wood stove for warmth, and made sure he had room to move around without being seen, but feeding him was the tricky part. Samuel was big, around 600 pounds, and needed a lot to eat. His natural diet included meat, fish, berries, roots, and nuts. I couldn't just buy groceries for two without attracting attention, so I had to think outside the box. I started hunting more, telling folks in town I was selling deer meat to explain my extra ammunition purchases. I even planted a huge vegetable garden and claimed it was just a new hobby. To keep things low-key, I drove to different towns to buy our groceries, making sure no one store would notice how much I was getting. Every trip required careful planning to avoid drawing any eyes. Samuel adjusted surprisingly well to his new life. Being naturally nocturnal helped a lot. He'd sleep during the day while I worked, then come alive at night when it was safe to be out. Evenings were spent in the barn together, developing our routines that felt almost like family life. He was fascinated by everything human. I brought him books, and although he couldn't read, he'd study the pictures for hours. I had an old radio, and he loved listening to music, especially classical, which seemed to soothe him. When MTV started airing music videos, I set up a little television with a VCR. Samuel would sit and watch for hours, completely captivated by the moving images. I joked once, "You're probably the only Bigfoot in the world who's seen Michael Jackson's Thriller video," as I watched him in wonder. He made a sound that I learned meant he was amused. If he could have laughed, he would have. But there were close calls, especially back in those early days. In March 1985, a big storm tore up the roof of the barn. I had to hire a contractor to fix it, so Samuel had to hide in the hayloft under blankets. For 3 days, I kept tarps over everything while workers were on the property. I stayed right by Samuel's side, scared that one of the guys might hear him move or even breathe. "Just a little longer," I'd whisper as I heard hammers banging above us. "Stay quiet. Stay still." Samuel was amazing. He could stay completely still for hours. When the workers finally left and I took off the tarps, he was stiff and uncomfortable, but he hadn't made a peep. In July 1986, a forest fire came dangerously close, just 2 miles from my home. They were issuing evacuation orders, and the police were going door to door to make sure everyone left. I told them I'd evacuated, but then I snuck back to be with Samuel. "I'm not leaving you," I said as smoke filled the air and ash rained down like snow. "If this place burns, we'll burn together." Samuel looked at me, a mix of gratitude and worry in his eyes. He put his hand on his chest, then pointed at me and the forest, telling me to save myself, that I didn't have to stick around. "Yeah, I do," I said back. "You're my responsibility now, buddy. Friends don't leave each other." That night, the fire changed direction, and my place was spared by less than a mile. Once the evacuation order was lifted and I got back home, I told everyone I was staying with friends in Bend. No one questioned it. As time went on, Samuel and I fell into a good routine. I learned more about him than anyone probably ever had. He was incredibly strong. Once, I saw him lift a 300-pound beam with one hand. He was surprisingly agile for his size, able to scale the barn in seconds. His senses were amazing. He could hear my truck coming from a mile away and smelled anyone approaching well before I could see them. His night vision was perfect, navigating the barn in total darkness like it was nothing. But what struck me most was how emotionally complex he was. He could feel joy, sadness, loneliness, fear, and affection. He even had a sense of humor. Sometimes he'd hide my tools just for fun and chuckle whenever I couldn't find them. He could be playful, gentle, and thoughtful. In 1987, I made a big change to the property. I told folks in town I was building a storage shed, but what I was really doing was creating a tunnel system that connected the barn to a fenced-in section of forest, where Samuel could safely roam outside at night. I had a 20-foot underground tunnel, sturdy with wood and concrete, that led to a quarter-acre fenced-in area. Camouflaged to blend in with the forest, I spent 6 months working every evening. But when it was done, Samuel finally had access to fresh air and real trees after 3 years. That first night outside, he stood under the stars for an hour, just gazing up at the sky. I watched from the tunnel entrance and noticed tears in his eyes. "I know it's not quite real freedom," I said softly, "but it's something." He made a gentle sound and placed his hand over his heart. "Thank you." By 1989, we created a better way to communicate. I made flashcards with simple pictures and words to help him connect images with meanings. He started pointing at the cards, sharing more complex thoughts. He learned numbers, understood time, and I showed him clock faces to explain when I'd be back. He even grasped days of the week. One evening, I told him, "You're smarter than most people I know," as he correctly matched a sequence of cards. "If only the world knew what you are and what you can do." But that's exactly why they couldn't know. Close calls happened repeatedly over the years. In 1991, a hiker lost his way and ended up on my property. I found him near the barn. Tired and thirsty, I gave him water and pointed him back to the main trail, all while Samuel stayed completely quiet just 20 feet away. In 1993, property values began to climb, and developers started buying land. A real estate agent came to see if I wanted to sell. She wandered too close to the barn for my liking. "That's a nice barn," she said. "Good bones. A buyer could turn it into a guest house or studio." "Not for sale," I replied firmly. "This place stays in the family." "Everything's for sale at the right price, Mr. Walsh," she countered. "Not this, not ever," I insisted. She left disappointed but came back twice more with better offers. Each time I declined. Samuel mattered more than any money. As the 1990s went on, I grew anxious about what lay ahead. I was in my late 30s, fit and strong, but that wouldn't last forever. What would happen to Samuel when I got old? What about when I was gone? He'd been in that barn for almost 10 years. By then, he'd lost his knack for surviving in the wild. He relied on me completely. So, I started saving up money and making plans. I began buying up the neighboring properties whenever they went on the market. 40 acres in 1994. Then another 60 in 1996. By 1998, I owned 140 acres of forest, creating a bigger buffer between Samuel and the outside world. I also kept journals I wrote down how to care for Samuel, what he liked to eat, his health problems. His leg that had been trapped gave him arthritis. I noted his routines and preferences. If something ever happened to me, at least someone would know how to look after him. Samuel seemed to pick up on my worries. One evening in 1999, 15 years after I found him, he did something amazing. Using picture cards, he made a sequence. A picture of me, one of him, a house, and a heart. I sensed it meant you and me, home, love. He nodded and pointed at me, then made a gesture I recognized, his hand over his heart reaching out to me. It was his way of showing gratitude for taking care of him. I said, "Yeah, buddy," with a lump in my throat. "We're family. You're stuck with me for the long haul." As the year 2000 rolled in, the world was worried about Y2K, but I had my own concerns. Samuel was middle-aged now, around 40, and I was 42. We had spent almost half our lives together, away from it all, crafting our own little world in that barn and the surrounding woods. I had given up a normal life, no wife, no kids, no close friends. Keeping Samuel's secret meant keeping everyone away. My whole life revolved around protecting him, taking care of him, keeping him hidden. But that New Year's Eve, watching him relax in the barn, listening to classical music as the new year rolled in, I knew I had made the right choice. The world might call him a monster or a curiosity, but to me, he was a person, different, yes, but a thinking, feeling being deserving of dignity and safety. I vowed to protect him no matter the cost for as long as I lived. The 2000s brought challenges I had not seen coming. Technology was moving fast, and with that came new threats to Samuel's secrecy. Satellite images were getting clearer and easier to access. Google Earth launched in 2005, and suddenly, anyone with an internet connection could see aerial views of properties, including mine. I started worrying about what might show up from above. I built extra roofs over the outdoor enclosure to mimic a natural tree canopy. I even planted fast-growing trees in the right spots to block any sight lines. I looked into thermal imaging tech too, scared that someone might spot Samuel's heat signature. One evening in 2006, I told Samuel, "The world's getting smaller. It's harder to keep secrets. Everyone's got cameras now, along with the internet and GPS. We have to be extra careful." Samuel, now in his 60s, nodded slowly. He got it. His hair was starting to gray around his face and shoulders, and he wasn't moving as smoothly as he did 2 decades ago. The arthritis in his leg bothered him more, especially when it was cold. I was 48 then, and I could feel age creeping in on me too. Years of carpentry had taken a toll on my back and knees. I worried about what would happen when I could not take care of Samuel anymore. When climbing ladders to fix the barn became too risky. when lifting heavy loads of food became impossible. In 2007, I made a decision that scared me, but felt necessary. I needed help, but not from strangers. I reached out to my nephew, David Walsh. He was 23 and working as a park ranger in Washington. David had always been a good kid, responsible and trustworthy, someone who respected nature and privacy. He was family. If anyone could keep this under wraps, it would be him. I invited him to visit for a week in August 2007. On his third day there, after we had reconnected and I had reassessed his character, I decided to take a leap of faith. "David, I need to show you something," I said. "What you're about to see, you can never tell anyone, not your parents, not your girlfriend, not your ranger buddies. If you can't promise that, we're done here." David looked worried, but he was also curious. "Uncle Henry, are you in trouble? Is this illegal?" "It's not illegal exactly, but if anyone found out, they would take away something very important to me. Someone very important." I led him to the barn. Samuel was in the outdoor enclosure, which I could access through a tunnel. That morning, I had told Samuel someone new was coming, someone I trusted, and he needed to stay calm and not be afraid. When David saw Samuel, he stood there under the trees and suddenly fell back, scrambling away, shocked. "What the heck? That's a Bigfoot." "His name is Samuel," I said calmly. "He's been living here since 1984. That's 23 years, David. I found him trapped and dying, and I have been keeping him safe ever since." David was speechless, just staring at Samuel, who watched him back with cautious eyes. "He's smart, David. Maybe even smarter than us in some ways. He gets English, speaks through gestures and pictures. He is kind and gentle, and he is my best friend. Right now, though, he is scared because there's a stranger here. So you need to chill out." It took David about an hour to wrap his head around it all. He fired off 100 questions, and I answered every one calmly. Finally, he looked at me with wide-eyed astonishment. "Uncle Henry, do you get what this means? This is huge, like the biggest zoological find ever. Scientists will want to lock him up, study him like some lab rat, make him famous, strip away his dignity and freedom." I interrupted him. "I know what they will do, David. That is exactly why no one can ever find out. Samuel is a person, not just a specimen. He has rights, even if the law does not see it that way. He has feelings, preferences, fears. He deserves to live peacefully, not stuck in a zoo or a lab." David spent the rest of that week getting to know Samuel. By the end, he understood why I kept this secret. He promised to help out, to step in if anything happened to me, and to take over caring for Samuel if needed. "Thank you," I said as he was leaving. "You've just taken on the biggest secret in the world." "I won't let you down, Uncle Henry, or Samuel," he replied. Having David in on the secret felt like a weight off my shoulders, but it also brought new worries. Over the years, he kept his promise, never told anyone, and visited often to help with heavy tasks. I knew I'd made the right choice. In 2008, I hit 50, and Samuel was around 65. We both started slowing down, but our routines stayed the same. Samuel had his evening outdoor time, his meals, and his music and television shows. I even got a DVD player. And Samuel picked up some favorite movies, especially nature documentaries. I think he missed the wild world he used to roam. But that year, we faced an unexpected issue. In October, during a routine visit, David noticed Samuel was acting strangely. "Uncle Henry, something's off. Look at him." Samuel was gasping for air, struggling with each breath. His face was different, and he looked out of it. I'd seen him under the weather before. Coughs, little bugs. But this was something else. "I think it's his heart," I said, feeling the panic rise. "Or maybe it's pneumonia." "David, what do we do? I can't take him to a vet or a doctor." "Do you have a stethoscope? Any first aid training?" David asked. It was basic stuff, but nothing for something serious. Then he decided, "I know someone, a vet friend who handles large animals. She won't ask questions. Let me call her." "David, no. Uncle Henry, if we don't act, Samuel could die. Trust me." Dr. Lisa Chen came the next morning, thinking she was seeing a large exotic animal that a ranger's uncle kept illegally. David kept it vague. When she laid eyes on Samuel, she went quiet for a minute. "That's not possible," she finally muttered. "It is possible, and it's real, and he's dying," I said. "Can you help him?" To her credit, Lisa quickly gathered herself and checked Samuel. He was too sick to be scared of this new face. She diagnosed him with pneumonia. It was severe, but treatable if we moved fast. "He needs antibiotics, respiratory support, and monitoring. I can do that," she said. But then she looked at me and David. "This is real. You're hiding a living Bigfoot for 24 years. "Yes," I replied. "And if you tell anyone, they'll take him away from me. Please." She thought for a moment, then nodded. "I'll help. But you both owe me every detail about how this happened." For 2 weeks, she came daily, bringing medication and equipment. By day 5, Samuel's fever broke, and by day 10, he was breathing normally again. Lisa wouldn't take any payment. "This experience is enough," she said. "He's incredible," she told me. "Physiologically similar to great apes, but with traits of his own. His lung capacity is amazing. That's why he survived pneumonia that would have killed a human, and he trusts you completely. The bond you two share? I've never seen anything like it between a human and an animal." "He's not just an animal," I corrected her gently. "He's a person, different, but a person." Lisa nodded slowly. "Yes, I see that now." She became part of our small circle of trust. 3 people in the world who knew about Samuel, all committed to protecting him. The 2010s brought more changes. I turned 60 that year. In 2018, I officially became a senior citizen, but I felt a lot older. My back was killing me. My knees were worse. And after that minor heart attack, back in 2015, I was pretty shaken up. Samuel was in his 70s now. He moved slowly, slept more, and ate less. We were both aging, and I couldn't shake the feeling that our time together was limited. David started visiting more often, bringing his wife Emily into the fold in 2016. After they got married, Emily, a biologist, was initially taken aback, but adapted quickly. She assisted Lisa in keeping an eye on Samuel's health, documenting everything in a scientific way. "Uncle Henry, you've got all these detailed records from over 30 years, Emily said while going through my journals. "This information is priceless for studying an unknown species." I quickly replied, "No publications, not while he's alive. I won't risk anyone finding him. After we're gone, you can decide what to do, but not now." She nodded, understanding. "But Henry, what if he isn't the last? What if there are others who could benefit from what you know about taking care of him?" It was a question that haunted me. Were there others like Samuel hiding out in the wilderness, struggling to survive? If they existed, could my knowledge help them? But revealing anything about Samuel meant risking his safety. I made a promise 40 years ago to keep him safe. By 2019, Samuel's health was visibly declining. He was eating less, moving stiffly, and spent most of his time sleeping. Lisa examined him and shared my worst fears. "He's dying, Henry. Not right away, but his body is shutting down slowly. He's just old. He might have a few more years, but he's in the final stage." That evening, I sat with Samuel, my hand resting on his massive shoulder. We were both weary, facing the end. "You've had a good life," I told him. "You've been safe, loved, comfortable. That's more than a lot of people get. I hope you don't regret spending all these years with me." Samuel covered my hand with his and pointed back and forth between us, reminding me of that heart symbol he drew all those years ago. No regrets. Family love. Tears welled up in my eyes. "Yeah, me too, buddy. Me too." Samuel surprised everyone by living longer than Lisa expected. From 2020 into 2021, while the world was busy with the COVID pandemic, Samuel and I faced our own quiet battle with aging and the reality of mortality. The feeling of isolation that everyone was going through wasn't new for us. We had been living in isolation for 36 years. Surprisingly, the pandemic was somewhat helpful. With people staying home and fewer visitors around, the chance of being discovered decreased. David and Emily moved into one of my other houses, supposedly to lend a hand during the lockdown, but really, they were there to help me care for Samuel every day. Samuel's world had basically shrunk down to just the barn. He didn't have the strength to make it to the outdoor area anymore. His arthritis was bad, so he spent most of his time on a comfy new bed we built for him. It was a sturdy platform with thick padding to support his weight. But his mind was still sharp. He loved listening to music and watching nature shows on the TV we set up so he could see easily. He still communicated with us using gestures and picture cards, though he moved more slowly now, more carefully. In June 2021, I turned 63, and Samuel was probably around 78 or 79. We had been together for 37 years, more than half my life and more than half of his. One evening, I sat beside his bed and asked, "Do you remember when we met? You were in pain, and I couldn't just leave you to suffer. I never planned for any of this. I never thought we'd be together for 4 decades. Samuel made a gentle sound and pointed to a card showing 2 figures together. Then he pointed at me, then at himself, and placed his hand over his heart. "Brothers," I said, getting it. "Yeah, we became brothers, didn't we?" He nodded slowly, his eyes still bright despite his old body, filled with something I could only call love. In September 2021, Samuel started to eat less. Lisa checked him out and found nothing seriously wrong, just the usual decline that comes with being very old. She upped his pain meds and made sure he was comfortable. "It could be days or weeks," she told me quietly. "But Henry, you need to brace yourself and think about what's next." Next? I hadn't allowed myself to think that far ahead. His body. We can't just bury him in the woods like a pet. He's important, Henry. What he represents, everything you've recorded about him. The science world and everyone else should know he was here. I promised him secrecy. You promised to protect him while he was alive. After he's gone, things will change. Lisa took a moment. That promise, it won't stay the same. I really didn't want to think about it, but she was right. Samuel's passing would bring up questions I'd been avoiding forever. What do we do with his body? How can we honor his life while keeping our secret safe? David had a different view. "Uncle Henry, you've kept Samuel hidden for nearly 40 years. It's such a powerful act of love and protection. But when he's gone, shouldn't the world know that these creatures really exist? That one of them trusted a human to spend his whole life with him? I was worried. The government will come. They'll take him, grab my journals, and classify everything. His memory could vanish into some locked vault. Emily chimed in, but what if we control the story? Document everything first. Photos, videos, DNA samples. What if we go public right after he passes, so broadly that the government can't bury it? Lisa frowned. That's risky. Henry could face legal troubles for hiding an endangered species, especially if they choose to classify it that way. He could lose everything. I sighed. I'm 63 years old. I've lived my life. If sharing Samuel's story costs me my freedom or even my home, maybe it's worth it. He deserves to be remembered as more than just a legend. So, we got to work that fall in 2021. Emily snapped hundreds of pictures of Samuel, showing off his features, his home, his cards, everything. David filmed Samuel interacting, answering questions, showing just how smart he was. Lisa gathered blood and hair samples for DNA testing at a lab she trusted. I sorted through my journals, 37 years worth of daily notes on Samuel's life, his actions, what he ate, his health, and feelings. It was the most thorough record of a Bigfoot ever made. Samuel seemed to get what we were doing. He went along with the photos and videos, even posed a bit sometimes. On good days, he showed off his communication skills, pointing at cards to answer David's questions. "Why do you think he's okay with this?" David asked me. "If he's been hiding all this time, why let us document everything now?" I replied, "Because he knows he's dying. Maybe deep down he wants to be remembered, wants others like him to be known, even if he's the only one we've ever seen." On December 3rd, 2021, Samuel took a turn for the worse. David, Emily, Lisa, and I all gathered in the barn. Samuel was gasping for breath, clearly in pain despite the meds. I turned to Lisa, asking, "Is he suffering?" She replied, "Yes, his lungs are failing. It won't be long." I sat next to Samuel, holding his huge hand in both of mine. "It's okay, buddy. You can let go now. You fought hard. You've had a good life, been loved and safe. That's all anyone can hope for." Samuel looked at me, then squeezed my hand weakly. Then, to my surprise, he made sounds, something like words. His body couldn't speak like a human, but I recognized it. "Henry, thank you." For 37 years, we communicated with gestures and pictures, and right in those final moments, he said my name. "You're welcome," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for 40 years of companionship." "I love you, Samuel." He made one last soft sound, squeezed my hand again, and then he stopped breathing. The barn was quiet except for my sobs and Emily's soft cries. Samuel was gone. We stayed with him for hours, unable to leave. Finally, just as dawn broke on December 4th, 2021, we started the preparations we'd planned. Lisa carried out a thorough examination and took tissue samples for preservation. Emily and David captured final photos and measurements. I jotted down the last entry in my journal. December 4th, 2021. Samuel passed away peacefully at around 3:47 in the morning, surrounded by family. He was around 78 years old and had spent 37 years, 3 months, and 20 days with me. The world lost something truly special. We placed his body in a refrigerated storage unit we'd set up. keeping it at a steady temperature as we moved forward with our plan. We decided to go public in stages. First, David and Emily shared their documentation online, photos, videos, and scientific analysis, across multiple channels to prevent any suppression. They sent packages to major news outlets, scientific journals, and cryptozoology organizations. Then, Lisa submitted her DNA findings to a peer-reviewed genetics journal, detailing samples from an unidentified North American hominid while holding back the full story for now. I got ready to share an exclusive interview with a big news network about Samuel's life and my 4 decades of keeping him safe. We went public on December 15th, 2021, just 11 days after Samuel passed away. The response was wild and instant. Within hours, my place was swarming with news vans, reporters, government cars, and lots of curious folks. My phone wouldn't stop ringing until I finally unplugged it. The internet blew up. Was this real? A huge hoax? A groundbreaking discovery? Then, on December 16th, federal agents showed up demanding access to Samuel's remains and all my records. I let them in and showed them everything I had. A senior agent named Sarah Thornton took her time examining Samuel's body before she finally spoke. "Mr. Walsh," she said, "do you realize the legal mess you've created? Harboring an unknown species, blocking scientific research, keeping information from federal authorities." I jumped in. I protected a living, intelligent being from being captured and experimented on. I gave him dignity and safety. If that's against the law, then charge me. Thornton stared at me for a moment. "Mr. Walsh, there have been rumors about these creatures for decades. Reports, sightings, even whispers of government knowledge. What you have here is solid proof. This body, your records, the DNA evidence, all of it is real, and it's going to change everything." "Good," I said. "It should. Samuel deserves to be known. His kind deserves respect and protection. If others exist, maybe we can protect them instead of hiding them." She warned me, "You might have just sparked the biggest crisis in cryptozoology and anthropology ever. Are you ready for what's coming?" "I've had 40 years to prepare," I replied. "I'm ready." The months after our big reveal were pure chaos. My property turned into a constant hub of media, scientists, government officials, and protesters debating Samuel's remains. I did a ton of interviews, showcasing my journals, the barn where he lived, and the communication system we created over 40 years. The DNA tests confirmed everything. Samuel was indeed a new hominid species, sitting somewhere between modern humans and ancient ones like Neanderthals. The scientific community was split between those who were amazed by the discovery. People were doubtful about how something like this could stay hidden for so long. In January 2022, the government officially decided that Samuel's species was critically endangered, maybe even extinct. They set up a task force to see if there were more of them out there. They offered me immunity from prosecution if I would fully cooperate and help with any conservation plans. "They want your help finding more," David said as we went through the legal papers. "After hiding Samuel for 40 years, they expect you to assist them in looking for his kind. If there are others, they deserve real protection," I replied. "Not just monitoring and secrecy." Samuel hid away because he was scared of humans. Maybe we can create a world where he doesn't have to live in fear. But the government had something else to reveal. In February 2022, Agent Thornton came back with classified documents. "Mr. Walsh, what I'm about to tell you has been secret for a long time. The government has known about Bigfoot populations since the 1960s. We've been quietly watching over them and keeping their habitats safe while controlling the information to avoid the chaos your discovery has stirred up. I was shocked. You've known all along while I was hiding Samuel, terrified you'd come and take him away. You already knew these creatures existed. We knew they were out there. We just had no clue. Someone had one living on their property for 40 years. The reason we kept this info quiet wasn't to deny they exist, but to protect them from hunters and scientists who might exploit them. Your revelation has put the remaining populations in danger. Then protect them publicly, I said. Make their habitat legally safe. Enforce laws against harming them. Stop pretending they don't exist and actually do something about it. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. You've hidden the truth to make your jobs easier, not to truly protect these creatures. Samuel lived for 40 years in a barn because he was scared to be free. That's not protection. That's a different kind of prison. The argument raged on through 2022 and into 2023. Environmental groups were pushing for official protection under the Endangered Species Act. Hunting organizations debated whether Bigfoot should be considered game, if it was just an animal, and ethicists wrestled with whether a human-like species should have legal rights. Samuel's body remained in federal custody as different research teams examined it. They confirmed everything I had documented: his intelligence, his unique physical traits, and his ability to feel and communicate. Some scientists suggested displaying him at the Smithsonian as a tribute to an unknown species. Others argued for returning his remains to the wild, buried back in the forest from where he was taken 40 years ago. I stood firm for the latter choice. Samuel spent his entire adult life hiding from the spotlight. We wouldn't turn him into a spectacle in death. In August 2023, a compromise was reached. Samuel would be cremated, and his ashes scattered in the Cascade Mountains, close to where I found him. A small amount of tissue samples would be kept for future genetic research. My journals and records would be saved at the Smithsonian for researchers, but wouldn't be turned into a public spectacle. The ceremony took place on September 1st, 2023, exactly 39 years and 18 days since I found Samuel trapped in that clearing. David, Emily, Lisa, and I, along with a few scientists and government officials who had worked on the case, hiked to the spot. I carried his ashes in a plain wooden box I had crafted in my workshop, a final carpentry project for my dear friend. When we arrived, I opened the box and scattered his ashes among the trees where he once roamed free. I spoke to everyone there, saying Samuel was more than just a scientific curiosity. He was a person. He had preferences, feelings, and memories. He loved classical music and nature documentaries. He had a sense of humor. He grieved, laughed, felt fear, joy, and affection. For 40 years, he was my family, and I was his. He trusted me when he had every reason not to trust humans. He could have left, but he stayed. He gave me companionship and purpose, and in return, I offered him safety and dignity. That's what I hope people remember. Not just that Bigfoot is real, but that they deserve our respect, protection, and compassion. As I scattered the last of the ashes, I whispered, "Rest easy, buddy. You're home now." The aftermath of Samuel's discovery continued on into 2023 and 2024. There were several credible sightings investigated, but no others were captured or confirmed. Habitat protection laws were passed in multiple states to create large wilderness areas where these creatures could live peacefully, undisturbed. In March 2024, I celebrated my 66th birthday. It had been over 2 years since Samuel was gone. The barn where he lived still stood, but it was empty now I had cleared it out completely. The bed we built, the TV and DVD player, even the picture cards we used to talk. Everything was documented and saved as proof of a 40-year journey of friendship across species. In April 2024, I gave my last big interview. I sat on my porch, looking out at the forest that had been both Samuel's prison and his haven. The reporter asked me, "Do you regret it? 40 years spent hiding and protecting Samuel. You never married, never had kids. Do you regret that?" I paused to think. What I regret is that he had to be hidden at all. I regret that the world wasn't safe for him to roam free. I regret he spent all those years in that barn instead of these forests. But do I regret knowing him, protecting him, loving him? Absolutely not. Not for 1 second. "What do you hope Samuel's legacy will be?" she asked. I replied, "I hope people see that there's so much more to this world than we realize. There are still mysteries in the wild, and they need our protection, not our greed. If there are others like Samuel out there, I hope they're treated with the dignity he deserved, even if only with me." The reporter continued, "What would you say to Samuel if you could talk to him one more time?" I gazed out at the forest, the mountains, the sky, where I like to think Samuel is finally free. I'd say thank you. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for 40 years of friendship. Thank you for showing me that intelligence and emotion aren't just human traits. Family can come in unexpected forms. And sometimes, the most important thing we can do is protect those who can't protect themselves. I'd also tell him, I'm sorry. Sorry it took so long to share his story. Sorry the world wasn't ready for him. Sorry he had to live in hiding. But most of all, I'd remind him what I said every night for 40 years, that he was loved, that he mattered, and that his life meant more than anyone could truly grasp. The reporter switched off her recorder. "That was beautiful, Mr. Walsh. Thank you." After she left, I stayed on that porch until sunset, just like I used to do before visiting Samuel in the barn. I still felt that pull, that urge to go check on him, but the barn was empty. Samuel was gone. The secret was finally out. And here I was, just an old man living alone in the woods, left with nothing but memories, and the realization that I'd done something truly extraordinary, though the world hadn't known it for 40 long years. David and Emily come by often. Lisa swings by to see how I'm doing. They worry I'll feel lonely, that I'll be lost without Samuel. Maybe they're right. 40 years dedicated to one purpose, one friendship. What do you do when that's taken away? But I still have the journals, the photographs, and all those memories of a friendship that shouldn't have existed, but did. I've got the comfort of knowing Samuel's story is out there now, that he mattered. He'll be remembered not as a legend, but as a real, breathing being who deserved more than what the world was willing to give him. In my bedroom, there's one thing I hold on to, Samuel's favorite picture card. It's simple, with 2 stick figures standing side by side, a heart between them, family, love, brotherhood. That's what we were. That's what we'll always be, even though he's gone. I'm 66 years old. I hid a living Bigfoot from the government for 40 years, and I'd do it all again in a heartbeat. Because some friendships are worth any sacrifice, and some secrets are kept not out of shame, but out of love. Sometimes, the most amazing thing an ordinary person can do is protect something extraordinary, something that deserves dignity and respect. That was Samuel's gift to me. the privilege of protecting him, knowing him, and being his friend.